I want to welcome you all this morning. We're gathered, of course, to learn from two teachers about the value of language in our schools, the value of language to our children, and I don't think we have been able to choose a better example than the example that we saw just now. It's a very moving opportunity that we have to see Hawaiian return to its status in this land that it once had. I want to just mention briefly a little bit about the roadmap and then about the Seal of Biliteracy before I introduce the Dean who will give us our opening remarks today. I would like to welcome our distinguished guests. We have the Chancellor here this morning, Chancellor Bly-Roman. And our two visiting speakers, Linda Egnatz and Michelle Anciao-Oki. Many distinguished guests from the community, including our First Lady. The Hawaii Language Roadmap was launched in 2013 through the vision of now Chancellor Robert Bly-Roman, who then was Dean of the College of Languages, Linguistics, and Literature. He heard that other states were working together to find pathways to bring languages into their workforce, into their communities, to value language as a way that can improve our society and that can improve our economy. And so he pursued funding from the federal government, which was then turned into an effort to create a pathway for Hawaii to move in this direction. And in 2013, in September, the Hawaii Language Roadmap was launched with 8 initiatives, which you have laid out in the brochure in your packets. One of those initiatives was the World Language Initiative, and that World Language Initiative included within it one small line that said certification of biliteracy. Well, that one small line has become many, many hours of work, many hands working together, many voices speaking together. First, those voices spoke to the legislature, to the Education Committee and the Senate as Senate Bill 900, and during that time, Senator Suzanne Chan Oakland was our champion. She brought the bill together with many people from the community, including our Board of Education member Patricia Halagao, who then spearheaded it in the Board of Education. And through her tremendously enthusiastic and excellent leadership, the board passed the Seal of Biliteracy as a policy in June of last year. At this time, it's our job to begin to bring it into reality. Right now, it's a policy, it's a piece of paper. It hasn't spoken to us as a community yet. It's our job to give it the voice it deserves. And that's why we have brought this symposium of members of education and business and the community, nonprofits, bringing us all together to learn how to give the Seal of Biliteracy a voice, actually a multilingual voice, so that all the voices of our children can be heard and those voices can contribute to the betterment of our society. With that, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Dean Jeffrey Carroll, who is supposed to get a leg, who will give us our opening remarks and who has continued our leadership in support mahalo, of the initiative in funding and in manpower. It wouldn't have been possible without his support today. Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.
It's been my pleasure really following up on Chancellor Bly-Roman's initiatives as a kind of vanguard of interesting and valuable work for the state and particularly for our college as it works to integrate its work with the work of the schools and community. This morning we've already enjoyed a wonderful oli by our school children. It is in itself a beautiful expression of tradition that underlies, underscores, and blesses all that live here in the islands. As a reminder, it can move us as human language is meant to move us with the collective force of cultures, societies, families, and institutions and individuals. I think for today, the oli can serve as a symbol of how voices raised together can do great things, not only in their collective expression, but in their intended motivations and goals and visions. When I was in elementary school, I can recall my first time on a stage with a speaking part. Our third grade class was doing fairy tale skits. I was the narrator who stood at one corner of the stage and introduced each skit. The fear and trepidation I felt was enormous, but really I only had to stand there and read from a script in my hands, as I'm doing now. The really brave ones, I thought at the time, were my fellow classmates on the stage, acting out in costume and possibly wonderful tales like The Gingerbread Boy and Little Miss Muffet. I have to return to those early memories to make a point about the power of language, to shake the ground and make us move along with or against it in order to get things done. For better or worse, at that early age, I committed myself to the power of language to get things done. Over the years, I moved from poetry to fiction to journalism to essays to research and back to long-form research. What was clear to me all along was how all of us share the potential for effective language use, but only some of us were able to choose it as a career path, as a subject in itself. We were the ones who ran the school paper, the school literary magazine, drama club, debate club, school government. We just liked to revel in the medium of language the way my sons love to revel in the waters of Sandy Beach. They roll around in it, swim, play as if it is the most familiar medium in their lives. So language for many of us, but that was then, and I have to resituate myself very particularly in this place right now, today. Friday, on a short walk across campus, I heard Hebrew, Tagalog, Korean, Japanese, and English. Over the past year and a half as interim dean of the College of Languages, Linguistics, and Literature, I have heard many, many more. For me, the dominant English of my youth has been joined by other languages, each of them dominant in particular places in history, location, and use. They were always there, of course, but they were hidden from my view. As adventurous as I was in using language, my ventures into other languages only took the form of several years struggling with French, because it afforded me a more authentic look at the literature written in that language. Times have changed that our college, that is LLL, manages to teach and study over 24 languages, to value cultures expressed and preserved through them. Some are more popular than others, but the goal is to allow each and every language to grow and breathe just as those language users grow and breathe. About breath, and here's where the roadmap enters. What was the air of the spaces around us is breathed in, shaped, and breathed out, a good part of the time vocalized into language, or languages if we are lucky enough to have that level of biliteracy in reach. I'm speaking now about speech, but we can enlarge to reading, writing, listening, of course. The breath is vocalized, and suddenly we really exist. We stand our ground and declare ourselves and societies. The roadmap, the way to get somewhere, wherever we want to go, school, church, shopping, work, or a better idea, is what is at stake in the work of every language teacher, every legislator, every student who draws the breath of air before speech or keyboard, as I know many of us do. Big breath, big burst of typing. But to do this in 2 languages, it is difficult, of course, to do much of this, any of this, in one language. To speak up, to write, to get good grades and a good job, well, it all requires one good language grasped and used with real talent. But 2, or 3, or 4, let's consider that for a moment. Speaking 2 languages when I was a kid was always almost magical. The question always occurred, can you actually think in 2 languages? My jaw dropped when a new friend spoke Spanish as if he had been born with it. He had. Of course he had, and in Hawai'i, friends of my children just start chatting away in another language of Asia, perhaps of the Pacific, But now I should add a language of the world. It isn't just literature, it's commerce, and not just commerce. It's the everyday reality of getting a job, of having work that we can live on and support our loved ones with. I'm not going into the data. Dina and our guests have it at their fingertips, I'm sure, for the rest of the morning. But as much as we expected and required a literacy of children and adults 2 or 3 generations ago, we need to expect a bi- or multi-literacy of children and adults today. It's as if in the old days, when my children really have trouble believing that we had electricity and colored photography, we were all one-handed and didn't know it. We didn't know what the second hand was for. Imagine if today we didn't know that a second language is like a second hand, and it can be flexed, strengthened, and put to critical good use with the guidance of our parents, guardians, schools, governments, and businesses. That second hand, in speaking of language, may be a heritage language, or one encountered in classrooms, or soaked up over years at home. It may be English, a still dominant force in our schools and careers at work that can't be withheld from those who need to take up a full role in our society, nor can the languages of those places spread across anyone's roadmap not be available for study, recognition, and integration into one's future. I have a minor illustration of this, my closing anecdote, I suppose. In a foreign land, Thailand, and this was many years ago, I am clearly lost, or at least turned around so that the map from the hotel is suddenly rather too complicated to recognize any landmarks on it. I'm very tourist appearing and very helpless appearing. I must have been turning around in circles on a very busy corner in Chiang Mai. A boy about 10 steps out from a market stall, approaches me with a very straight, businesslike face. Not exactly grim, but not exactly friendly either. I immediately sense that he has done this before, and he is good at it. "Can I help you?" he asks, in English. "I think I got lost. Which way is the Orchid Hotel from here?" He turns away from me, and I notice a middle-aged man sitting on a stool, half obscured by a rack of shirts hanging along one side of the stall. To the man, the boy speaks Thai, or what I assume is Thai. The man speaks back to him in Thai, one wave of the hand vaguely in the direction of a corner I hadn't gotten to. The boy turns back to me and says, in English of course, "You need to go further that way, turn to your left, and continue 1 mile. Then a warm smile, and I thank him, and certainly, thankfully, follow his directions. Just a minor transaction, but it is still very clear in my memory. Similar to many encounters many of us have had when we travel. But imagine the boy, the power he already has, the ability perhaps in the future to read a medical textbook, or how to fix a computer or get a driver's license when he goes abroad, or how to ask directions when he runs into me on the streets of Honolulu. The transactional powers of language are infinite, of course, and I think it is not only fun, but useful to keep flipping or switching positions with those whose abilities need to be ours and may need to exceed ours, as many of our young people do today, who need, and that is need, and I have it in capital letters here on my script, to have both hands free to work. Multiliteracy, to raise the stakes, but really just to increase the odds of success, is an ideal goal of any roadmap, to travel freely and to speak and listen and read and write with others, regardless of difference or diversity. My Chiang Mai anecdote suggests what power there is in this difference. Cultures are represented and preserved and displayed through language and invite others in conversation. What better motive can this symposium have than to display differences, than engage with others, to draw together, to work with both hands? Thank you.